Hello, everybody. This is going to be on relationships, and it's really, really important, right? I was just going to write it down in my journal, but I'm like, I'm going to make a video to remember this. And then I'm like, oh, I'll make it for other people. That's how these happen sometimes, right? Because when I get such a giant revelation, I want the whole world to know. The whole world meaning whoever, is lucky enough, fortunate enough. In The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien talks a lot about luck. But then in one place in The Lord of the Rings, I was just listening to it again or reading it too. And he said something about, well, people call this luck, if you want to call it that. But it's really, there's like this divine hand, there's divine love that is weaving all of history together like a tapestry, like a painting. And so if this comes to you, I really am like, wow, like you are super fortunate. And this is not about me. It's because I just have a knowing of how fortunate I am to get this understanding that came to me today after it's been about, I'll just say it's been over 3 years of me. I mean, it's practically been my whole life of me struggling with this and wanting to understand this on this level. So let's just get into it. So just know that I welcome all people of all religions. So just wherever you're coming from. Sometimes, though, I'm going to explain things through the faith practice that I have learned. And just take it universally if you are someone else and you don't want to hear it that way, or just take it my way. It's not my way. It's the way that it's conveyed to me. All right. But these are deep truths about relationships. So you're worth the deep truths, regardless of what you take. I look at it like rain, like rain falls on all the crops for everybody, whether they recognize it as coming from God and the sunshine coming from God. That grows all our nourishment, and you're allowed to have food, even if you don't believe in God, it's kind of like that. Okay, so understand that when I'm just getting instruction. I'm praying really for a second and just giving this to divine love, to God, and asking, anyway, I don't have to go into all that I'm saying to God. Anyway, so when you go in your early childhood, when you're there, you didn't go into it, you were born into it, right? And you experience this thing of lack and being ignored and not known. Of course, we had love and nourishment and protection, or we wouldn't be alive, right? We weren't left out in the forests, Oh, anyway, I won't go off on that. Even if we were left in the forest, we survived, right? And so we're here. But some of that, let's just say, is we've got used to experiencing scraps, and you're not worth really knowing or listening to, or knowing your essence, knowing your deepest essence. You better do well in school, and you better perform, and you better earn money, and we get all those messages, those egotism messages, right? And so we get caught in our mind and our egotism, and we believe we are that, instead of this being, like, I'm Cheryl, I'm more than my name. Like, what is my name compared to me? What is your name compared to you? Who are you? Beyond your accomplishments and anything else you could have done, There's this essence of you. And I said it in my last video. I said it was from Ephesians 2. There's a verse that says, you are God's poema, God's poem. They translate his workmanship, but it's like you're his living verse, a living verse of poetry. And if you've ever studied poetry or entered into it, it's like the Lord of the Rings. There's all these songs that Tolkien has in it. It's like there's times when it's hard and difficult and bad, and times when it's beautiful and glorious and shining, And so You are this living poem, this living tapestry, this living painting. You know, I have a Van Gogh over there, right? You are this, right? And so what happens is that if you want to understand it as the picture of Adam, the first Adam, Adam came and was meant to have dominion, right? And rule. And he fell. All right, I'm just getting the inclination to stand up. And so he fell. And so someone else came. If you understand this, Christ came and stood and was called the new Adam. And so Christ came to give us freedom from the word sin is to miss the mark. So if you think that Adam was meant to be a king and priest, and Adam and Eve, because they were born together, well, they were created together, the Jewish Torah commentaries that I read said they were born as one, and then God took Eve out of Adam's side. But understand this as, you can understand this as a real thing, literally, but also understand if you can't take that, because that's a lot for people to take. So if you can't, then understand it as a myth conveying to us the truths of your spiritual passageway, of how to unlock your spiritual consciousness, how we're meant to live here, okay? Because the word sin, again, is to not live in accordance with the way you were designed to live. Now, all of this is going to come back to relationships, right? All right. Oh, I have an Arthur Rackham book right there. Painting. It's The Princess and the Pea. And so understand that let's just make it basic. This is how it came to me, right? Because sometimes our egotism wants to make it super complicated, right? And so let's just say Christ came to redeem us, to bring us into back the enlightened way to live, the virtuous way to live, the right way to live in accordance with divine love, in alignment with that, come back into oneness with divine love. Die to your egotism, die to your old self, let that die. Don't just let it go, right? And so, all right, so let me translate. This is how it showed up in relationships is, let's just say, okay, this is really generalizing, and this is not putting my parents down, because my parents gave me a lot of love in a lot of different ways, right? Or your parents down. We're not doing that. We're just saying what they gave us compared to the love, the divine love that Christ, if you understand Christ as like a bridge, Christ, like, let's say Adam fell from that highway of being, the highway. My friend Elliot has a song, Dancing on the Highway. It's the highway that he's talking about. I'm not saying he was perfect at that either, right? Elliot Smith. I have his song on my YouTube, Dancing on the Highway, because it was unreleased. And so I have pictures that I got in a meditation on that, a contemplation, because we had lots of conversations, but I heard the song after he died, but I was just getting all this insight about what he was conveying based on knowing him and based on my understanding of why we're here and of scripture and of consciousness and all of that. So it came through. So I recommend watching that. Not because I'm trying to recommend a video. Like, I don't care. I'm so not invested right now. Like, God worked hard really to strip that out of me, because I've been doing this for so long with no rewards, hardly any. I really, really welcome and appreciate each of you who are here. You 800 people of you. It's like Russell Brand will say, that's his name, right? He'll say like all 5 million of you. And I'm like, all 850 of you, and on my other channels, there's almost 1,000 on Facebook and Instagram, or I don't remember how many on Instagram. I think. Anyway, but I welcome all of you, each of you. It's so fortunate for you if you're seeing this and that you're on my channel and that you get exposed to these things, because like, I can't express how blessed I have in knowing that I am, that these have come to me now. And I know personally all the tears that I've shed, and the time that I've spent and the other stuff that I've not done to come to these truths, and so they've not been won easily. It's like the fire cordial that Lucy gets in the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. People died to give her that. And I know saints have died to give us this information. So it's not just my life. I just read these over the weekend again. Saint Seraphim. And, well, I read this one. But anyway, I won't go into that right now. About relationships, right? So let's just narrow it down to scraps, all right? What we got before with Adam was scraps, and Christ came to give us life. He says, I come to give you life and life abundantly, right? 11:11. It was 11:11 when I said that. And 11:11 is like one. You're coming back into the oneness with God. It's 4 of them, which is like the foundation of, and there's 4 gospels, right? And they're each talking to you about oneness with Christ. Like, I wish people just read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You'd get so much insight just from reading those. But that's what Saint Seraphim, this guy, right? Saint Seraphim was talking about. He's talking about, not that, but that was just one part of the book that I read, is he read Matthew every Monday and Mark every Tuesday. And, he was up all night reading these. Or, they'd wake up at 4 a.m. Anyway, and Luke on Wednesdays and John on Thursdays, and then the rest of the New Testament on the rest of the days. But anyway, inspiring, right? Because we're just like, what? People are like, oh yeah, I read that once, No, we want to know the high love and consciousness of Christ, because he's always wanting to free us in our everyday life right now. But about relationships, right? So I won't say how old I am, but that's as many years as I've been wanting to know this, right? Since I was born, let's say, or in utero, right? So, let's say our parents gave us what Adam gave us, which was scraps, which was, a knowing of God. We all have, Plato says everything we learn is a remembering, okay? So we all have a remembrance somehow in our DNA, or somehow in us, in our soul nature or something, of God, of where we came from, because we all came from divine love, from the Creator. Okay, and so I'm only going to talk for a few more minutes. That's what I plan to do. Is that we came from the Creator, and so we have a remembrance of true love, right? But then Adam fell from that. Adam and Eve, I'll just count Adam as Adam and Eve fell from that. And so we started getting scraps. So let's say they fell into egotism. That's just one way to describe it. They fell away from this relationship, this intimate relationship with God, right? And back into Maya, or mind, or materiality, or thinking, the tree represents this idea of, I don't trust God. I'm not communicating with God. I'm going to take what I think I need to take. And that's what I think is going to fill me. And that creates suffering, and death, a kind of death for sure, because death is separation from divine love. Like, that's death, all right, And so they didn't die physically at the time, but it started pulling away from this relationship. Now, if you understand Christ as reconnecting us, and even the Buddha predicted, and I got to find that. I want to find that. If anyone finds that, always just comment to me. Because I've looked, but you know how the internet like wipes things. I won't go into that. But anyway, predicted, but I read it from another mystic that saw it, I guess, that the Buddha had predicted that the Christ would come, that God would come on earth in human form. Now, it's hard for your mind to understand that, but we're not your mind. So go into your consciousness and check if that's true. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? All right. So Christ came to bring us back to God, to make a bridge back to divine love, so that you could have an abundant life, you could have real love and not scraps. So if my childhood and your childhood represents a bunch of scraps thrown at us, and we were taught and believed, started believing because of our experience. If you experience scraps, someone can say, oh, you're worth a lot of love, but here, I'm just going to give you scraps. What you took in, what you experienced was scraps. And so you start believing that as true. It was true of your experience, that you experienced scraps, people stepping on you, people not protecting you, people abusing you or using you or letting you be abused or not knowing what to do with you and help you through your abuse. And whatever has happened to you in the course of your life, that you are still alive, right? You are alive. Look at this. I have this right here. This from Christmases ago, and the star and the tree, right? So even if we were left in a forest, we have the Christmas tree. And I don't know, I'm not talking about the pagan root. I'm talking about the star on the top. That's Christ coming. The angels came to the shepherds, and the shepherds talked to the angels, and they said, Christ is born, rejoice. This is the day that God has made, let us rejoice, because you're not meant to have scraps anymore. You're not meant to have scraps anymore. Okay. So let me just tell you really quickly the mistake that I have been making my whole life. All right. That I never want to make anymore. So hold me accountable, right? I gotta just watch this video over and over again. That's why I don't want to make it super long. You can always watch these 2 times speed, right? Is that you're meant to have life. You're not meant to have scraps. And so I'm like, wait, I'm going to unite myself to Christ for real. Like, we're meant to be the bride of Christ. That means a wedding, a marriage to Christ. And when I'm with Christ in that way, in that intimacy, that means united back to divine love, to God. Then I'm not going to be attracted to any man. I appreciate men. Like, I'm not going to be attracted to any man to date, to marry, to what, to date, to marry. That's how I look at it, right? I don't want to cheat in any kind of way by taking shortcuts, but I won't go into that right now. I'm just saying, why would I want to date anymore, ever, or entertain in any fashion whatsoever someone that's just giving me scraps? That's what I knew in childhood. That's what I thought I deserved. But Christ comes to show us for real, something different in our lives. I'm not just preaching a religion. I'm saying, look at that. Look at the Arthur Rackham. Look at the top of this painting, and I've seen it before. There's the cross, right? There's always the cross. The cross will show you. Die to the scraps. Let those go in the ground and be washed away like the Egyptian chariots, right? So that you can raise with Christ. All right, much love.